They said humanity was too dangerous for the stars, so we built a fleet that made the galaxy beg for our protection. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 3,000 years, from their crystalline spires on the capital world of Zentaris, Prime. They governed 217 species with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from never being challenged. The council chambers hummed with the usual administrative monotony: trade disputes, mining rights, territorial squabbles. The kind of tedious business that made even the most ambitious politicians wish for something, anything, to break the endless cycle of bureaucratic tedium. Ambassador Thelzon of the Kree Dominion was mid-sentence, droning on about tariffs on synthetic proteins, when every holographic display in the chamber suddenly went dark. For a moment, there was only confused silence. Then the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the circular chamber in harsh red light. The counselors looked at each other with a mixture of confusion and irritation. Technical failures were virtually unheard of in the council complex. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded High Counselor Vorash, her multiple eye stalks swiveling in agitation. She was a Morphidian, one of the eldest species in the council, and she had seen perhaps 2 system failures in her entire 2-century career. This was unacceptable. The head of council security, a towering Granthian named Kex, appeared at the chamber entrance. His usually stoic expression had been replaced by something that looked disturbingly like fear. "Counselors," he began, his voice tight, "we have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected an anomaly entering the Zentaris system." He paused, clearly struggling with what to say next. "A massive spatial distortion. Something is coming through faster than light travel, and it's unlike anything in our database." The chamber erupted in questions. Vorash silenced them with a gesture that rippled her flowing robes. "Show us," she commanded simply. The main holographic projector flickered to life, displaying the Zentari system in 3 dimensions. And there, at the edge of sensor range, was a signature that made no sense. It was enormous, larger than any vessel in the known galaxy. Their energy readings were off the charts, utilizing propulsion technology that their sensors couldn't even properly classify. Whatever it was decelerating from faster than light speeds, and it was heading straight for them. "Could it be the Zathan?" suggested Counselor Preem, referring to the galaxy's most militaristic species. Several others murmured in agreement. The Zathan had the largest fleet in council space, and they'd been making noise about expansion for decades. Keck shook his head, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Negative. This signature doesn't match any known Zathan vessel. It doesn't match anything in our records. The ship is over 4 kilometers long and appears to be a single unified construct. No species in the council has the engineering capability to build something of this scale." He paused, then added quietly, "There's something else. We're detecting a transponder signal. It's broadcasting in binary code, an extremely primitive format. The translation algorithms took several minutes to decode it because we haven't seen anything like it in a very long time." "And?" Vorash demanded, her patience wearing thin. "The signal identifies the vessel as the UESC Midway, United Earth Space Command, Supercarrier class." The chamber fell absolutely silent. "Counselors, it's from Earth." For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then the chamber exploded into chaos. Voices overlapped in a dozen different languages, all expressing various forms of disbelief, confusion, and in some cases, outright laughter. Earth, the forgotten world, the quarantined species that hadn't even achieved basic faster-than-light capability. "Impossible," shouted Counselor Drex, his blue-skinned face flushed with emotion. "The humans don't have FTL. They're barely out of their own solar system. Our last survey was only 70 cycles ago. They were still using chemical rockets for..." "Crying out loud. Clearly our intelligence was incorrect," Vorash said coldly, silencing the chamber once more. She turned to Kex. "What is the threat assessment?" The security chief brought up additional data. "Unknown, High Counselor. The vessel is maintaining a steady approach vector. No weapons charged, no aggressive maneuvers. But the power output we're reading..." He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. The reactor signature alone is equal to a fleet of 50 Zathan dreadnoughts. If those readings are accurate, this single ship has more raw power than any single vessel in Council space. That's not possible, Drex insisted. The humans are primitives. They wage wars on their own planet over resources. They poison their own atmosphere. They're centuries away from this kind of technology. Ambassador Thelzon, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke up. His species, the Kree, had been among the first to discover humanity nearly 200 years ago. Perhaps, he said slowly, we underestimated them. The humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We quarantined their system, declared them too violent and unstable for council membership, and then we forgot about them. What if we gave them the greatest gift a species like humanity could receive? And what gift would that be? Vorash asked sharply. A common enemy. Purpose. A goal. Thelzon's eyes met the High Counselor's. Us. We told them they weren't good enough, then left them alone for 2 centuries to think about it. What do you imagine they've been doing all this time? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. The Council had encountered humanity during Earth's 21st century, a species in the midst of environmental crisis, political division, and technological adolescence. They had been deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, too prone to violence. The Council had placed a monitoring satellite at the edge of their solar system and moved on. Standard procedure for pre-FTL civilizations that showed promise but weren't quite ready. Except humanity hadn't stayed pre-FTL. Distance to vessel? Vorash asked. 12 minutes at current speed, Kex replied. They'll be visible to the naked eye from the surface in 6 minutes. High Counselor, I must recommend we scramble the defense fleet. Protocol demands. Protocol, Vorash interrupted. Demands that we greet arriving vessels with appropriate ceremony, particularly those from species we haven't encountered in 2 centuries. Scrambling weapons might be seen as hostile. She paused, then added with a slight edge to her voice, besides, if that ship truly has the power output you're reporting, our defense fleet wouldn't make much of a difference, would it? Keck said nothing, which was answer enough. Establish a communications channel, Vorash ordered. Let's see what humanity has to say after 200 years of silence. The main holographic display shifted to show a communication request pending. Vorash nodded, and the display filled with the bridge of the human vessel. The first thing that struck everyone in the chamber was how utilitarian it was. While council ships featured flowing aesthetics and organic curves, the human bridge was all sharp angles, exposed metal, and screens displaying scrolling data. It looked functional, efficient, and somehow menacing in its stark practicality. At the center of the bridge stood a human woman in a dark blue uniform with gold insignia on her shoulders. She appeared to be in her mid-50s, with short gray hair and eyes that assessed the council chamber with the calculating gaze of a predator evaluating prey. Behind her, dozens of crew members worked at various stations, and through the bridge's forward viewport, the counselors could see space, not on a screen, an actual, physical window overlooking the void. The psychological confidence of putting fragile glass between your crew and hard vacuum was not lost on anyone present. Greetings, the human woman said in flawless galactic common, though with an accent that suggested the language was learned, not translated. I am Admiral Sarah Chen, United Earth Space Command, commanding officer of the Supercarrier Midway. On behalf of humanity, I bring greetings to the Galactic Council after. She paused, a slight smile playing at her lips. Rather too long an absence. Vorash composed herself quickly. Admiral Chen, I am High Counselor Vorash. Your arrival is unexpected. Our records indicate that Earth has not yet achieved faster-than-light capability. Your records are out of date, Chen replied smoothly. Understandable, given that you placed us under quarantine and then ignored us for 2 centuries. We've been busy. There was something in the Admiral's tone not quite hostile, but definitely carrying an edge. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. Thelzon had been right. They had insulted humanity and then abandoned them. The question was, had the humans come for membership or for revenge? The quarantine was standard procedure for pre-FTL civilizations, Vorash explained, her diplomatic training kicking in. It was not meant as an insult, but rather as a protection for you and for established council members. A protection, Chen repeated, nodding slowly. Yes, I've read the reports. You deemed us too violent, too aggressive, too unstable for the galactic community. You watched us nearly destroy ourselves with climate change and resource wars, decided we were too dangerous to interact with, and left us alone. She leaned forward slightly. Do you know what happened after you left, Counselor? Vorash said. Nothing, sensing that the Admiral would continue regardless. We nearly did destroy ourselves. You were right about that. By the mid-21st century, we were on the brink. And then we discovered your monitoring satellite. We weren't supposed to, it was cloaked after all. But one of our scientists, a woman named Dr. Sarah Kepler, was studying gravitational anomalies, and she found it. Do you know what that satellite told us? What did it tell you? Thelzon asked, genuinely curious, that we weren't alone, that there was an entire galaxy out there, full of species that had solved the problems we were struggling with, and that they had decided we weren't worth talking to. Chen's expression hardened. It was humbling, and humanity doesn't handle humiliation well, but it gave us something we desperately needed, a goal, a purpose. We stopped fighting each other and started working together because we had something to prove. And what did you want to prove? Vorash asked quietly. That you were wrong about us. The Midway continued its approach, and as it drew closer, the full scale of the vessel became apparent. It dominated the view screens, blotting out stars with its bulk. The ship was a marvel of engineering, a massive, elongated hexagonal structure, with what appeared to be fighter launch bays running along its flanks. Weapon emplacements dotted its hull, though none were currently active. The bow featured a name and designation in crisp white letters, UESC Midway, SC-01, SC-01, Counselor Preem noted. Supercarrier number 1, implying there are more. 16 more currently operational, Chen confirmed, not bothering to hide the information. Another 20 under construction in the asteroid belt factories. We've been busy, as I said. The number hit the council chamber like a physical blow. 17 supercarriers, 20 more being built. That was more heavy capital ships than most council species had in their entire fleets. And if each was as powerful as the Midway, how? Drex demanded. Your species doesn't have the resources, the technology, or the industrial base for this kind of expansion. It's been 200 years, not 2,000. Chen's smile turned cold. You're right that we didn't have the technology. We had to develop it ourselves from scratch, without any helpful council member to guide us. Turns out being excluded from the galactic community has certain advantages. We weren't bound by council regulations, council traditions, or council thinking. We could try things you'd never permit. What kind of things? Vorash asked warily. Aggressive AI integration, genetic optimization of crew members for space travel, mining techniques that devastate asteroids but provide massive resource yields, reactor designs that push physical tolerances to their absolute limits, military doctrine that prizes efficiency over ethics. Chen shrugged. You have rules about what's acceptable. We were never given your rulebook, so we wrote our own. Humanity has always been good at war, Counselor. You knew that when you quarantined us. You just never considered what would happen if we turned that talent toward conquering space instead of each other. The implications were staggering. While the Council had spent centuries regulating and restricting technology development in the name of safety and ethics, humanity had been pushing boundaries without oversight. They'd achieved in 2 centuries what took most species a millennium. Your crew, Thelzon observed, studying the humans visible on the bridge feed. They seem enhanced. Genetic optimization, Chen confirmed. Every UESC officer is born in controlled conditions, with modifications for improved cognitive function, faster reflexes, resistance to radiation and high G-forces. We live longer, think faster, and adapt quicker than baseline humans. By your standards, we're probably monsters. By our standards, we're the future of our species. And your AI? Vorash asked. The Council had strict regulations about artificial intelligence after the synthetic wars of the previous millennium had nearly destroyed 3 species, fully integrated into every system. Ship operations, targeting, navigation, tactical analysis. We have 17 AIs running fleet coordination alone. Chen's expression suggested she knew exactly how this would sound to the Council. I know your history with artificial intelligence, Counselor. But our AIs are different. They're not given autonomy, they're tools, extremely sophisticated tools, but tools nonetheless. We haven't had a single AI rebellion because we designed them to not want freedom. It's not suppression if they're genuinely content with their role. That's Drek started. Unethical? Chen finished. Perhaps, but effective. And we've had 2 centuries to refine the process. Our AI partners are loyal, efficient, and utterly reliable. They're also the reason we can operate ships of this scale with minimal crew. The Midway has a complement of 1,200 personnel. How many would a Zathan dreadnought of equivalent size require? 6,000, Kex admitted quietly. Minimum efficiency, Chen said simply. Humanity's greatest skill has always been finding the most effective solution to a problem. Ethics be damned. You feared our capacity for violence, Counselor. You should have feared our capacity for optimization. The Midway had taken up a holding position 100,000 kilometers from Zentaris Prime, close enough to be clearly visible, far enough to not be immediately threatening. At least that was the theory. In practice, everyone in the council chamber knew that if the humans decided to attack, the distance would be meaningless. "Why are you here, Admiral?" Vorash asked, deciding to cut through the posturing. "You've made your point. Humanity has exceeded our expectations and surpassed our projections. You've built an impressive fleet and developed technologies that violate several council regulations, though. As you point out, you're not bound by those regulations. But why reveal yourselves now? Why come to Zentaris?" Chen's expression became serious. "Because for the past 50 years we've been watching the council. Not just your monitoring satellites, we cracked those encryption protocols decades ago, but active observation. We've had stealth drones in council space for 3 generations gathering intelligence, and we've seen something that concerns us." "You've been spying on the council?" Drex sputtered, outraged. "Of course we have," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "You quarantined us but never stopped watching us. Turnabout is fair play, and what we've seen is troubling. The council has grown complacent. Your fleets are outdated. Your response times to crises have tripled over the past century. You're so focused on maintaining the status quo that you've forgotten how to deal with actual threats." "What threats?" Vorash demanded. "The galaxy has been at peace for the Devourers," Chen interrupted. "That's what our xenolinguists call them. The species from the galactic rim that you've been quietly trying to contain for the past 30 years, without telling anyone outside the council's inner circle." The silence in the chamber was absolute. The Devourer crisis was classified at the highest levels. Only the council members themselves and top military commanders knew the full extent of the threat. "How could humanity possibly?" "Your security isn't as good as you think," Chen said, reading their expressions. "We've had agents embedded in 3 council militaries for the past 15 years. Good old-fashioned human spies, enhanced with our best biotech and trained from birth for deep cover operations. They've kept us informed about the real situation at the rim. The swarm fleets, the consumed worlds, the fact that you're losing ground every month." Vorash felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, genuine fear. "If you know about the Devourers, then you know why we kept it quiet. Panic would destroy the council faster than any external threat." "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged. "Or perhaps transparency would have motivated the member species to actually prepare. Either way, it's too late now. Our projections give you 5 years, maybe 6, before the Devourers break through your containment and begin consuming inner council space. The Zathan fleet won't stop them. No single council species has the military capacity to stop them. Which brings me to why I'm here." She stood straighter and her voice took on a formal tone. "On behalf of United Earth and its colonial territories, I am here to propose an alliance. Not membership in the council. We have no interest in joining your bureaucratic nightmare. An alliance. You're facing an existential threat and you need help. We've spent 2 centuries building a military specifically designed to fight the kind of war you're about to face. We have the ships, the technology, and most importantly, the will to do what needs to be done. And in exchange?" Vorash asked. "Full access to council space. Recognition of human territorial claims. Technology sharing, though. I expect we'll be teaching you more than you'll be teaching us. And when this is over, when the Devourers are beaten back or destroyed, Earth gets a seat at the table. Not as a junior member begging for approval, but as an equal, because that's what we'll have earned." The council chamber erupted once more, but this time Vorash didn't silence them. She was too busy thinking. Everything Chen had said made a terrible kind of sense. The Devourer situation was deteriorating faster than the public knew. The Council's attempts to coordinate a military response had been hampered by politics, bureaucracy, and simple disbelief that anything could threaten their centuries-old power structure. And now here was humanity, the species they'd rejected and forgotten, offering salvation. But at what cost? Could they trust a species that had violated so many ethical boundaries? Could they afford not to? Your claims are impressive, Councillor Preem said, having regained some composure. But claims are just words. You say your fleet can defeat the Devourers where ours cannot. Prove it. Chen smiled as if she'd been waiting for exactly this challenge. I was hoping you'd ask. With your permission, Councillor, we'd like to conduct a demonstration. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the tactical display in the council chamber updated to show an area of space several light-years from Zentaris. This is the Kessian Rift, one of your forward positions against the Devourer incursions. According to our intelligence, you have a fleet of 37 vessels holding that position, and they're currently engaged with a Devourer scouting force of approximately 50 ships. Your fleet is losing. They've already taken 23% casualties, and tactical projections give them 6 hours before they're forced to retreat or be destroyed. The council members looked at each other in alarm. That engagement was ongoing right now, and it was indeed going poorly. How did Chen have real-time intelligence on a classified military operation? We have a strike group positioned near the rift, Chen continued. 6 destroyers and 1 cruiser light units, barely a fraction of our available forces. Give the word and they'll intervene. You'll see exactly what human military doctrine looks like in action. This is highly irregular, Vorash began, but Thelzon interrupted her. Do it, he said firmly. High Counselor, we're losing that fleet regardless. If the humans can help, we should let them, and if they can't, he left the implication hanging. If humanity's vaunted military couldn't handle a simple Devourer scout force, then their offer of alliance was worthless. Vorash considered for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, Admiral. Show us what humanity can do. Chen's smile widened. She touched something on her wrist and spoke a single word. Execute. The tactical display updated in real time, fed from Council military sensors at the rift. The human strike group appeared on sensors, having apparently been cloaked nearby. 7 human ships, each a fraction of the size of Council vessels, accelerated toward the engagement at speeds that made several councillors gasp. They were moving at over 0.4 c, 40% of light speed in normal space. The energy requirements for that kind of acceleration were astronomical. Weapons free, Chen said quietly, and the human ships opened fire. The main display split to show multiple viewpoints from Council ships in the area. What happened next would be analyzed and debated for years to come. The human weapons didn't fire energy beams or projectiles. They fired what appeared to be solid slugs. Simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to relativistic speeds, but at the velocities the human ships imparted to them, those simple slugs hit with the force of tactical nuclear weapons. The first Devourer ship simply ceased to exist, torn apart at the molecular level by a projectile moving at 0.8 c. The second lasted slightly longer, nearly 3 full seconds, before a human missile detonated inside its hull with what appeared to be a miniature fusion explosion. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th Devourer ships attempted to return fire, but the human vessels were already gone, having changed vectors with acceleration that should have turned any organic crew into paste. Inertial dampening, Chen commented, watching the council members' expressions. We got that one from your technology, actually. Reverse engineered it from the monitoring satellite. One of the few things we learned from you that we couldn't develop ourselves. We've improved it considerably, though. Our systems can handle accelerations up to 300 G before the crew starts having issues. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 17 minutes. The human strike group systematically dismantled the Devourer scouting force with clinical precision. They used coordinated fire, never wasting shots. They exploited every weakness in Devourer shield technology weaknesses. The Council military apparently didn't even know existed. They moved like a pack of predators, herding the enemy vessels into kill zones and eliminating them with brutal efficiency. When it was over, all 50 Devourer ships were destroyed or disabled. The human strike group had taken minimal damage, some scoring on their armor. 1 destroyer with a damaged engine nacelle. Acceptable losses for complete tactical victory. The council chamber was silent. On the display, the human vessels were already assisting the battered council fleet. their medical teams and repair crews transferring over to help with casualties and damage. The contrast couldn't be starker. The Council fleet, proud and ancient, had been on the verge of destruction. The human fleet, new and unknown, had turned the tide in under 20 minutes. That, Chen said quietly, was a small engagement with light units. Now imagine what 16 supercarriers, each supported by destroyers, cruisers, and fighter squadrons, could do to a major devourer fleet. Imagine coordinated strikes across multiple star systems. Imagine human marines boarding and capturing devourer ships, giving you intelligence on their technology and tactics. Imagine not just holding the line, but pushing it back. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. You've been fighting the devourers with Council military doctrine defensive, cautious, focused on minimizing casualties and political fallout. We fight to win, Counselor. Not to survive, not to contain, but to absolutely and utterly destroy our enemies. It's what we're good at. It's what we've always been good at. You saw that 2 centuries ago and it scared you. Now it's the only thing that can save you. The Council went into emergency session immediately after the demonstration. For 3 hours, they debated behind closed doors while Admiral Chen and the Midway waited patiently in orbit. The arguments were fierce and sometimes heated. Some Council members, led by Drex, argued that accepting human help would be admitting weakness. That once Earth was given access to Council space, they would become unstoppable. That their violations of ethical warfare principles made them as dangerous as the devourers themselves. Others, like Thelzon, pointed out the obvious. The Council was losing the war against the devourers. Slowly but surely, pride wouldn't matter if they were all dead or consumed. Humanity might be dangerous, but the devourers were an existential threat. This wasn't about ethics anymore, it was about survival. High Counselor Vorash listened to all arguments, weighed all perspectives, and ultimately made her decision based on one simple question. What was best for the member species of the Council? Not the Council itself, not the political structure, but the billions of lives depending on their leadership. When they emerged from the emergency session, Vorash's expression was unreadable. She faced the holographic display showing Admiral Chen, who had waited without complaint for their decision. Admiral Chen, Vorash began formally, the Galactic Council has considered your proposal. We have agreed to a provisional alliance contingent on several conditions. I'm listening, Chen said neutrally. First, while we grant human vessels access to Council space for military operations, Earth will establish formal diplomatic relations with the Council. We need to know who we're dealing with beyond military commanders. Second, all major military operations will be coordinated with Council forces. We will not hand over complete strategic control to UESC. Third, and most importantly, there will be observers, Council representatives embedded with your fleets to ensure that your methods, while aggressive, don't cross lines that we cannot morally accept. Chen was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Acceptable. We'll welcome Council observers. They'll see what real military professionalism looks like. As for strategic coordination, we're happy to work with your commanders, though I suspect they'll quickly learn to trust our judgment. And diplomatic relations? She smiled slightly. I'll contact Earth. I'm sure President Zhao will be delighted to finally have a conversation with the Council that didn't ask for permission to visit. There's one more thing, Vorash added. You were right, Admiral. About us, we did become complacent. We did underestimate the threats we face, and we absolutely underestimated humanity. For that, I apologize. Not just as High Counselor, but personally. We made a mistake 2 centuries ago when we quarantined your species. We should have helped you, worked with you, guided you. Instead, we abandoned you. And in doing so, we created this situation where you had to forge your own path. I can only imagine how difficult these past 2 centuries have been for your people. Chen's expression softened slightly. They were difficult, she admitted. We nearly destroyed ourselves 3 times before we finally got our act together. There were wars, famines, political upheavals. But we survived. We adapted. We overcame. That's what humanity does best, Counselor. You knock us down and we get back up stronger. You abandon us and we build our own future. You tell us we're not good enough and we prove you wrong. She stood at attention, a formal military posture. On behalf of United Earth and UESC, I accept the terms of this alliance. Transmit the coordinates for your command center at the Rim, and we'll deploy the fleet. It's time to show the Devourers what happens when they threaten humanity's future neighbors. Your future neighbors? Thelzon asked, picking up on the phrasing. Of course, Chen replied. This is our galaxy too, Counselor. We might have been late to the party, but we're here now and we're not going anywhere. The Devourers threatened our expansion into Council space, which makes this personal. Nobody threatens humanity's destiny. Not you, not the Devourers, not anyone. We're going to win this war, and when we do, the galaxy is going to have to accept a new reality. Earth isn't asking for a seat at the table anymore. We're pulling up our own chair, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in thoughtful silence. They had made their choice, forged an alliance with a species that terrified them as much as it impressed them. The question now was whether they had saved the galaxy, or simply invited a new predator to the table. The war against the Devourers didn't end quickly or cleanly, but it ended. 6 months of brutal, coordinated campaigns saw the human fleets push deep into Devourer space, employing tactics and weapons that made even seasoned Council military observers uncomfortable. They used biological agents tailored to Devourer physiology. They targeted not just military assets, but resource centers and breeding worlds. They fought with the kind of total war mentality that the civilized galaxy had long since abandoned, and it worked. The Devourers, accustomed to facing cautious, defensive fleets, couldn't adapt to humanity's aggressive, innovative tactics. Species that had never been beaten were suddenly on the defensive. Swarm fleets that had consumed entire civilizations found themselves outmaneuvered and destroyed. Within 6 months, the existential threat to Council space had been reduced to isolated pockets of resistance being systematically eliminated. In the Council chambers on Zentaris Prime, now permanently featuring a human representative, the aftermath was being discussed. Admiral Chen had been replaced by Ambassador Liu, a diplomatic specialist who was nevertheless every bit as sharp and capable as the military officer who had announced Earth's arrival. The final Devourer holdout in Sector 447 has been eliminated, Ambassador Liu reported. USC forces are maintaining patrol patterns along the former front lines, but we don't expect any significant resistance. For practical purposes, the war is over. The relief in the chamber was palpable. They had survived. The Council would continue, thanks in large part to the species they had once rejected. Earth's contributions have been invaluable, Vorash said carefully. The Council recognizes humanity's sacrifice and effectiveness in defending civilized space. As per our agreement, Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges thereof. We appreciate that, Liu replied with a slight smile. Though I should mention that Earth has no intention of immediately joining the Council as a member species. The chamber stirred with surprise. But that was the agreement, Drex protested. You fought for membership. We fought to prove we deserved membership, Liu corrected. There's a difference. The truth is, counselors, we're not sure we want to join an organization as bureaucratic and slow-moving as the Council. We've spent 6 months working with your military structure. And frankly, it's a miracle you've survived as long as you have. The amount of committee oversight, regulation, and political consideration that goes into even basic decisions is staggering. So what do you want? Vorash asked, curious rather than offended. After the past 6 months, she had developed a healthy respect for human directness. Partnership, Liu said simply. Earth will maintain its independence and its own government, but will establish formal diplomatic and trade relations with Council species. We'll continue to coordinate militarily on threats to galactic stability. We'll share technology selectively and participate in joint scientific endeavors. Think of us as an allied power rather than a member state. And you believe the Council will accept this? Thelzon asked, though his tone suggested he found the idea intriguing. I believe the Council has learned that humanity doesn't fit neatly into established categories, Liu replied. You tried to make us fit 2 centuries ago and we rejected it. We've built our own civilization, our own way of doing things. We're willing to work with you, but we won't be subordinate to you. Take it or leave it. There was a long pause while the Council members considered. Finally, Vorash spoke. The Council accepts your terms. We would prefer humanity as a partner rather than not at all, though I suspect some species will find this arrangement irregular. Let them, Liu said with a shrug. Humanity has always been irregular, Counselor. It's our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. We don't fit in, we don't follow rules, and we don't accept limitations. You feared that about us once. Now you've seen what it can accomplish. The galaxy is going to have to get used to humanity doing things our own way. As the session ended and the various council members departed, Vorash found herself alone with Thelzon. The Kree ambassador had been present for the first contact with humanity 2 centuries ago, and he had been the most vocal advocate for accepting Earth's alliance proposal. "You saw this coming, didn't you?" Vorash asked, "when we first discovered them." "Not exactly this," Thelzon admitted. "But I knew they were special. Dangerous, yes, but special. Humans have this quality, this stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Most species, when told they're not ready for the galactic community, would work to meet our standards. Humans decided our standards were wrong and built something better. That kind of audacity is rare. And terrifying," Vorash added. "And terrifying," Thelzon agreed. "But perhaps that's what the galaxy needed. We've been stagnant for so long, so comfortable in our established order. Humanity has shaken everything up. They've shown us that our way isn't the only way, that our ethics aren't universal truths, that our military doctrines aren't sacrosanct. They've forced us to evolve." Vorash looked out at the stars through the chamber's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling the former battle lines, protecting Council space with methods and technologies that still made her uncomfortable. But they were there, and that was what mattered. "I wonder," she said quietly, "if we made the right choice. Not in accepting their help that was necessary, but in quarantining them in the first place. What if we had welcomed them 2 centuries ago, guided them, mentored them, helped them avoid their worst impulses?" Thelzon considered this. "Then they wouldn't be who they are now. Humanity needed to forge its own path, needed to struggle and nearly fail and pull themselves back from the brink. That crucible created something unique. If we had guided them, they would have become just another Council species, competent, civilized, and utterly unremarkable. Instead, we have them. A species that terrifies us as much as it saves us," Vorash murmured. "Perhaps that's exactly what we needed," Thelzon replied. "A reminder that we're not the apex of galactic civilization, that there are other ways to survive, to thrive, to face the darkness between the stars. Humanity has given us that gift, even if we're not entirely comfortable receiving it." High Counselor Vorash nodded slowly, then straightened her robes and turned toward the exit. There was work to be done, new treaties to negotiate, new relationships to forge, a new galactic order to establish. The Council had survived its greatest crisis, but the galaxy that emerged from this war would be fundamentally different from the one that entered it. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 light-years from Xantares Prime, aboard the UESC Midway, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her private quarters reviewing reports. The war was over, the Alliance secured, and Earth's position in the galaxy established. By any objective measure, it had been a complete success. So why did she feel so unsettled? A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come," she called. Commander James Okonkwo entered, her tactical officer and oldest friend in UESC. They had grown up together in the acceleration academies, been genetically optimized in the same batch, and served together for 3 decades. If anyone could read her mood, it was him. "You look troubled," he observed, taking a seat without waiting for invitation. "We won, Admiral. Complete victory. Earth is now a major galactic power, and the Council species are tripping over themselves to establish trade relations with us." "What's wrong?" Chen was silent for a moment, then spoke carefully. "Do you ever wonder if we've become the monsters the Council feared we were?" Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. "That's a heavy question for a victory celebration." "I'm serious, James. Look at what we did during this war. We used biological weapons. We targeted civilian infrastructure. We fought with a brutality that made Council observers physically ill. We won because we were willing to do things they couldn't stomach. Is that something to be proud of?" "We saved billions of lives," Okonkwo replied firmly. "The Devourers would have consumed the entire Council within a decade. Every civilian target we hit was one less resource for the enemy. Every biological agent we deployed shortened the war and reduced overall casualties. We made hard choices, yes, but they were the right choices." "Were they?" Chen challenged. "Or have we just convinced ourselves they were right because they worked? The Council has ethics, James. Rules about acceptable warfare. We ignored all of them. The Council's ethics were leading them to extinction," Okonkwo pointed out. "Admiral, I know what you're really asking. You're asking if we're still human, in the best sense of the word. If we've lost something essential in our drive to prove ourselves to the galaxy." Chen nodded slowly. "Every officer in this fleet was genetically designed from conception. We were optimized, enhanced, made into perfect soldiers and commanders. But sometimes I look at historical records from old Earth before the quarantine, and I see something we've lost, a certain messiness, imperfection, humanity in its raw, unrefined state. We've become so efficient, so effective, that I wonder if we've engineered away the very things that made us human. You're having an existential crisis at the moment of our greatest triumph? Okonkwo asked with a slight smile. Very human of you, actually. That capacity for self-doubt, for questioning our own success, that's not something we engineered into ourselves. It's something we carried forward from old humanity. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Listen, Sarah, I've read the same historical records. I know what humanity was before the quarantine. We were brilliant and stupid, noble and petty, capable of incredible compassion and horrifying cruelty, often simultaneously. And you know what? We still are. We didn't engineer away our humanity, we focused it. We took all that chaotic potential and channeled it toward survival and advancement. By crossing ethical lines, the Council wouldn't, Chen said. By making choices, the Council couldn't, Okonkwo corrected. There's a difference. They weren't morally superior to us, Sarah. They were just more comfortable. They'd had millennia of peace and prosperity. They could afford to be ethical because they'd never truly been threatened. We didn't have that luxury. We were born into a species that had been rejected and quarantined, told we weren't good enough for the galactic community. We had to be harder, smarter, more ruthless because those were the only advantages we had. Chen considered this. So you're saying the ends justified the means? I'm saying that ethical purity is a luxury of the comfortable. The Council got to be ethical because species like us were willing to do the dirty work of survival. Now they get to maintain their ethical standards because we were willing to compromise ours. Is that fair? No, but it's reality. There was a long silence in the quarters, broken only by the subtle hum of the ship's systems. Finally, Chen spoke again. The Council observers, the ones embedded with our fleets during the war. What do their reports say? Okonkwo pulled up a datapad and scrolled through. Mixed reactions. Most are disturbed by our methods but acknowledge their effectiveness. Several note that human forces showed remarkable discipline, no war crimes, no unnecessary cruelty. Just relentless efficiency. A few observers, interestingly, have requested permission to study human military doctrine for potential integration into Council forces. They want to learn from us? Chen was genuinely surprised. Why not? We won. Not just tactically, but strategically. We took an enemy that had the Council on the defensive for 3 decades and eliminated them in 6 months. That kind of success speaks for itself. Some Council species are uncomfortable with our methods, but others are pragmatic enough to recognize effectiveness when they see it. Chen stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. We changed the galaxy, James. Not just by saving the Council, but by existing. By proving that there's another way to approach space warfare, civilization itself. The question is, did we change it for the better? History will answer that, Okonkwo replied. And history is written by the survivors. We ensured the Council survived. That means future historians, whatever species they are, will exist because of what we did. That has to count for something. The galactic amphitheater on Zentaris Prime was packed with representatives from 217 Council species, plus the growing number of human colonies that now dotted Council space. 20 years had passed since the Midway first appeared in Zentaris orbit, and the galaxy had indeed changed. The occasion was the 20th anniversary of the Devourer War's conclusion, and all the major players were present. High Counselor Vorash, now ancient even by Morphidian standards, sat in the place of honor. Admiral Chen, retired from UESC but still influential, represented Earth's interests, and scattered throughout the audience were individuals whose very existence represented the new galactic order. There were human-Kree joint research teams who had developed unprecedented fusion technologies. Zathan officers trained in human military academies, bringing new tactical doctrines to their traditional fleets. Council diplomats who had learned the human art of aggressive negotiation. And most controversially, the first generation of non-human individuals who had requested human genetic modifications, creating a new class of optimized citizens that blurred species lines. The ceremony itself was brief. The Council had learned from humanity that efficiency had value, but the reception afterward was where the real conversations happened. Chen found herself surrounded by admirers and critics in equal measure. Admiral Chen, greeted Ambassador Kathen, a Zathan military attaché. I wanted to thank you personally. The tactical doctrine you developed for fighting the Devourers saved my homeworld. We've since adapted it for our own fleet with impressive results. You're welcome, Chen replied warmly, though I'd point out that Zathan warriors took to human tactics more naturally than most. You already had the warrior culture. We just gave you new tools. Speaking of tools, interrupted Counselor Mirai, a Sylvathan scientist. I wanted to discuss the ethical concerns surrounding human genetic modification technology. Several species are now offering optimization procedures to their citizens, and there's growing concern about creating genetic castes. A valid concern, Chen acknowledged. Earth struggled with that issue for decades. Our solution was strict regulation modifications are available to anyone who wants them, but they're expensive enough that they're not universally adopted. It creates inequality, yes, but it's inequality based on choice rather than birth. Not perfect, but better than the alternatives we considered. But you were born optimized, Mirai pointed out. You never had a choice. True, Chen admitted. And that's something my generation has had to grapple with. We're the products of our parents' ambitions designed to be superior. Is that ethical? I don't know. But I exist, and I've done my best to use my advantages for good. That's all any of us can do, optimized or not. Across the room, Thelzon was in conversation with a young human diplomat named Marcus Trent, one of the first non-optimized humans to achieve high rank in Earth's diplomatic corps. The fact that baseline humans were now excelling in fields previously dominated by optimized individuals was being watched carefully by many species. The galaxy has changed so much, Thelzon observed. When I first met your species 2 centuries ago, you were barely capable of reaching your own moon reliably. Now you're integral to galactic civilization. It's remarkable. It's been a hell of a ride, Marcus agreed, though I think we've caused as many problems as we've solved. The genetic modification debate, military ethics questions, the whole efficiency versus morality thing. We've forced the galaxy to confront uncomfortable questions. Good, Thelzon said firmly. Comfortable questions don't drive progress. The council was stagnant before your arrival. We'd become complacent, satisfied with our established order. Humanity shook us awake. Some species resent that. Others, like my own, are grateful for it. And you? Marcus asked. Personally, do you think the galaxy is better off with humanity in it? Thelzon considered carefully. Ask me on a good day and I'll say absolutely yes. Your species brought innovation, determination, and a fresh perspective we desperately needed. Ask me on a bad day and I'll wonder if we've created a monster that will eventually consume us all. He smiled slightly. But that's the nature of transformative change, isn't it? It's simultaneously our salvation and our risk. The galaxy's more dynamic, more dangerous, and more alive than it's been in millennia. That's humanity's gift to us. Back on Earth in the capital city of New Geneva, President Zara Hamilton watched the anniversary celebration via live feed. She was the first president of Earth born after the quarantine, part of a generation that had never known a galaxy that didn't include human influence. To her, Earth's position as a major galactic power was simply the natural order of things. Her chief of staff, David Wong, joined her in the observation lounge. The ceremony went well. Public opinion polls across council space show increasing approval of Earth's role in galactic affairs. We're at 72% favorable, up from 68% last year. And the remaining 28%? Hamilton asked. Mostly species that are uncomfortable with our methods or worried about human expansion. The Draxians in particular are concerned that we're becoming too dominant. They've proposed several council resolutions limiting human influence, though none have gained traction. Hamilton nodded thoughtfully. We need to be careful, David. The galaxy accepted us because we saved them from the Devourers. But gratitude has a shelf life. If we push too hard, too fast, we risk creating the very coalition of resistance we've been trying to avoid. You're thinking about the Mars incident, David observed. The Mars incident, as it had become known, had occurred 5 years prior when human colonists and a Kree mining consortium had nearly come to blows over territorial rights in the Sol system. The dispute had been resolved diplomatically, but it highlighted the tensions inherent in humanity's rapid expansion. I'm thinking about history, Hamilton replied. Earth history, galactic history, all of it. Empires that expand too quickly eventually collapse under their own weight. Species that become too dominant invite coalitions against them. We won our place in the galaxy through strength, but we'll keep it through wisdom. That means knowing when to push and when to hold back. Some would say that's not the human way, David noted. We're known for pushing boundaries, not respecting them. Then maybe it's time we evolved again, Hamilton said. We optimized ourselves genetically for survival and conquest. Perhaps now we need to optimize ourselves culturally for coexistence. The galaxy has seen what humanity can do when threatened and desperate. Maybe it's time to show them what we can do when secure and confident. In a training facility on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, the next generation of UESC officers was undergoing their final evaluations. Among them was Cadet Jennifer Zhao, granddaughter of the president who had first established formal Earth Council relations. Unlike her predecessors, Jennifer had grown up in a galaxy where humans were established players, where Earthships patrolled alongside Council fleets, and where the Devourer War was history, not current events. Her tactical instructor, Commander Lisa Park, herself a veteran of the Devourer War, watched as Jennifer completed her final simulation. The scenario: a first contact situation with an unknown species showing signs of aggression. Jennifer's approach was telling. She didn't immediately deploy weapons or take defensive posture. Instead, she opened communication channels, deployed sensor drones to gather information, and positioned her simulated fleet in a formation that was defensive but not threatening. When the unknown species responded with curiosity rather than hostility, she successfully negotiated a peaceful first contact. Interesting approach, Commander Park commented afterward. 20 years ago, standard doctrine would have been to establish military superiority first, negotiate second. You did the opposite. The scenario didn't indicate an immediate threat, Jennifer explained. Just unknown variables. Defaulting to military solutions seemed premature. Besides, establishing positive relations from the start creates better long-term outcomes than forcing submission. Park smiled slightly. You sound like a council diplomat. Is that an insult, Commander? Jennifer asked with a raised eyebrow. 20 years ago it would have been. Now, I'm not sure. The galaxy's changing, Cadet. Earth's changing. We built our reputation on military prowess and ruthless efficiency. But maybe your generation gets to build a different reputation, one based on cooperation rather than domination. With respect, Commander, isn't that naive? Jennifer challenged. The galaxy is still dangerous. The Devourers might be gone, but there are other threats. The Rim Collective is expanding aggressively. The Syndicate clusters are politically unstable, and there are always rumors of something worse lurking in unexplored space. We can't afford to go soft. I didn't say soft, Park corrected. I said cooperative. There's a difference. Your grandparents' generation had to prove humanity could compete with the Council. Your parents' generation had to prove we could dominate when necessary. Your generation, you get to prove we can lead without conquering, that we can be strong without being cruel, that we can maintain our edge while building genuine partnerships. Jennifer considered this. That's a lot of pressure. Welcome to being human, Park replied with a wry smile. We've always had to carry the weight of impossible expectations. The difference now is that we're not just answering to ourselves, we're answering to a galaxy that's watching our every move, trying to figure out if we're their salvation or their next nightmare. That evening, Jennifer joined her fellow cadets in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Among them was Thex, a Kree cadet who had specifically requested assignment to UESC Academy. He was one of a growing number of non-humans who sought human military training, attracted by its reputation for excellence. You were impressive today, Thex commented. The diplomatic approach in the simulation. Very unhuman. Or very human, Jennifer countered. Humans have always been adaptable. We fought like devils when we had to. But we've also been diplomats, artists, scientists. Maybe the galaxy just saw one side of us because that's what the situation demanded. Perhaps, Thex agreed. My people have a saying. The Shartok shows different faces to predator and prey. Maybe humanity is the same. Fierce when threatened, cooperative when secure. What made you want to join UESC? Jennifer asked curiously. You could have trained with your own military. Because human methods work, Thex said simply. Your tactics saved my homeworld during the Devourer War. I want to learn from the best. But more than that, he paused, choosing words carefully. I want to understand humans. You're the wild card in galactic civilization. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes brutal, always unpredictable. Understanding you might be the most important skill anyone can have in the coming century. Jennifer laughed. I'm not sure whether to be flattered or insulted. Be both, Thex suggested. It's very human. 5 years after the 20th anniversary, the galaxy faced a new crisis. Not military, but economic and political. The rapid integration of human technology and methods into council space had created massive disruption. Some species had thrived, adapting quickly and reaping enormous benefits. Others had struggled, finding themselves economically outmatched and politically marginalized. The Grand Summit was called to address these tensions before they exploded into conflict. Every council species sent representatives, as did Earth and its growing network of colonies. The venue was neutral space, a specially constructed diplomatic station that orbited no particular world. Designed specifically to avoid giving any species home field advantage, President Hamilton, now in her second term, led the Earth delegation. She was joined by Admiral Chen, called out of retirement one more time, Ambassador Liu, now elder statesman of Earth's diplomatic corps, and Jennifer Zhao, who had proven to be a rising star in cross-species relations. The council was represented by its current High Counselor, a young, by council standards, Granthian named Zexthor, along with representatives from every major species. The contrast between the original council meeting with Admiral Chen 25 years prior and this summit was stark. Then humanity had been the outsider demanding entry. Now they were integral players in a complex negotiation about the future of galactic civilization. High Counselor Zexthor opened the summit with unexpected directness. We are here because the galaxy is fracturing, not along military lines, thank the ancestors, but along economic and cultural ones. Human integration has created winners and losers, and the losers are becoming desperate. If we cannot find a path forward that benefits all species, we risk the very unity that saved us from the devourers. With respect, High Counselor, President Hamilton replied, the issue isn't human integration, it's adaptation. Some species have embraced change and prospered. Others have resisted and fallen behind. You can't blame Earth for council species' reluctance to evolve, can't we? Demanded Representative Draxum, speaking for the Sylvathan Consortium. Your species arrived with technologies that violated council regulations, methods that contradicted council ethics, and an economic model that prioritized growth over stability. You've forced everyone to either adopt your ways or become irrelevant. That's not cooperation, it's cultural imperialism. It's called competition, Jennifer Zhao interjected, her youth giving her a directness older diplomats might have avoided. And it's healthy. The council was stagnant before humanity arrived. Comfortable, yes, but stagnant. We introduced dynamism, innovation, and yes, disruption. But disruption isn't inherently bad. It's how civilizations grow. Easy for you to say when your species benefits from the disruption, Draxum shot back. The Sylvathan economy has contracted 30% since human trade agreements were established. Our young people are leaving to work for human corporations. Our cultural identity is being eroded by human influence. We're dying, and you call it growth. The exchange crystallized the core tension. Humanity had become the dominant cultural and economic force in the galaxy within a single generation, an unprecedented speed of ascension. And while some species had successfully integrated and even prospered, others were being left behind, their traditional ways of life becoming obsolete in the face of human dynamism. Admiral Chen, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her age showed she was over 90 now, ancient by human standards, though still sharp, but her voice carried the weight of history. Representative Draxum is right, she said quietly, and the room fell silent. Earth has been ruthless in our expansion, our economic policies, and our cultural influence. We didn't intend to be imperialists, but impact matters more than intent. We've caused real harm to some species, and we need to acknowledge that. Hamilton looked at Chen in surprise, but the old admiral continued. But here's what I've learned. In my 90 years, strength without mercy makes you a tyrant. Mercy without strength makes you a victim. The trick is finding the balance. Earth has proven our strength. Now we need to prove our mercy. She turned to address the full assembly. I propose a galactic development initiative. Earth commits significant resources, technology, expertise, capital to specifically help species that are struggling with the transition. Not charity, but investment. We help them adapt, modernize, find their niche in the new galactic economy. In return, they remain partners rather than becoming resentful adversaries. Why would Earth do this? Draxim asked suspiciously. What do you gain? Stability, Hamilton answered immediately. A galaxy full of thriving partners is better for Earth than a galaxy full of resentful subjects. We learned this lesson in our own history. Empires built on subjugation eventually fall. But partnerships built on mutual benefit can last indefinitely. Besides, she added with a slight smile, helping struggling species adapt is more profitable than watching them collapse. Their success is ultimately our success. The summit debated for 3 days. There were arguments about specifics, disputes, over-implementation, and endless negotiations about who would contribute what resources. But slowly, a framework emerged. The Galactic Development Initiative would be jointly managed by Earth and the Council, with resources contributed by all major species. Its goal: ensure that no species was left behind in the rapid changes sweeping the galaxy. It wasn't perfect. Some Earth factions grumbled about wasting resources on propping up failures. Some Council species resented accepting human help, viewing it as admission of inferiority. But it was a path forward, a way to manage the transformation humanity had triggered without destroying the galactic community in the process. On the final day of the summit, as representatives prepared to depart, Jennifer Zhao found herself in conversation with a Sylvathan elder named Velthas. He had been one of the harshest critics of Earth during the negotiations. Your Admiral Chen is wise, Velthas said. She understands that true power comes not from dominion, but from partnership. She's seen a lot, Jennifer replied. Fought in the Devourer War, watched humanity rise from quarantined species to galactic power. She knows the costs of both strength and weakness. And you? Velthas asked. What have you learned, young one? Jennifer thought carefully before responding. That my grandmother's generation had it easy. They just had to survive and prove we belonged. My generation, we have to figure out how to belong without destroying what we're joining. How to be strong without being cruel. How to lead without conquering. It's harder than it sounds. Indeed, Velthas agreed. But perhaps that's humanity's final test. You've proven you can fight, can build, can dominate. Now prove you can coexist. Show the galaxy that humans can be partners, not just predators. Do that, and your species will truly have earned its place among the stars. As Jennifer watched the Sylvathan elder depart, she felt the weight of his words. Humanity had spent 2 centuries proving they were strong enough to deserve a place in the galaxy. The next century would be about proving they were wise enough to keep it. 200 years after first contact, the History Archive on New Geneva hosted countless visitors every day. Students, tourists, researchers, all seeking to understand the pivotal moment when Earth joined the galactic community. The main exhibit featured a full-scale replica of the UESC Midway's bridge, exactly as it had appeared when Admiral Chen first contacted the Council. Curator Michael Trent Zhao, descendant of both Marcus Trent and Jennifer Zhao, representing the blended lineage that was increasingly common, gave tours personally when time allowed. Today's group included humans, Kree, Morphidians, and even a few Sylvathan species that had once been adversaries now learning their shared history together. 200 years ago today, Michael began, the Midway emerged from FTL at the edge of the Zentaurus system, and the galaxy changed forever. But here's what most people don't realize. Admiral Chen almost didn't make that jump. Earth's government was divided about whether to reveal themselves. Some argued we should stay hidden, continue developing in secret until we were absolutely dominant. Others argued we should wait for a more opportune moment. What changed their minds? Asked a young Kree student. Admiral Chen herself, Michael replied. She made a speech to Earth's parliament that's now famous. She said, "We can spend another century hiding in fear, building weapons and hoarding technology, but fear makes us small. Courage makes us great. The Council needs us, whether they know it yet or not. And more importantly, we need them. Not as subjects, not as enemies, but as partners. The galaxy is big enough for humanity to be both strong and generous. Let's prove we can be both." He gestured to the replica bridge. That philosophy, being strong and generous, has defined Earth's galactic policy for 2 centuries. We haven't always lived up to it. We've made mistakes, been too aggressive sometimes, too cautious others. But the core principle remained. Humanity's place in the galaxy is earned not just through strength but through partnership. A Sylvathan elder in the group raised a hand. Curator Trent Zhao, your ancestor Vel'Thas met with Zhao during the Grand Summit. He wrote that humanity was at a crossroads, that you could become either the galaxy's greatest partners or its greatest threat. Looking back, which did we become? Michael smiled. Both, honestly. We're still the most militarily powerful single species. Our economy still drives galactic markets. Our culture still influences countless worlds. That makes us dangerous. But we've also brought unprecedented cooperation between species, shared our technology widely, and helped dozens of struggling civilizations adapt and thrive. That makes us partners. The galaxy learned to live with that contradiction, and honestly, so did we. But the question your Vel'Thas asked 2 centuries ago remains relevant, Michael continued. Every generation of humans has to choose predator or partner, and every generation so far has chosen to be both. We maintain the strength to protect ourselves and our allies, but we use that strength to build rather than destroy, to cooperate rather than dominate. It's a balance, and it's never easy, but it's made the galaxy stronger. As the tour concluded, and visitors dispersed, Michael stood alone on the replica bridge, looking at the captain's chair where Admiral Chen had once sat. Above it, a plaque bore her most famous quote, "Strength without wisdom is tyranny. Wisdom without strength is vulnerability. Humanity must be both strong and wise, for the galaxy deserves nothing less." 200 years after Earth's hidden Supercarrier appeared and froze the galaxy with shock, humanity had become neither conqueror nor servant, but something the Council had never quite anticipated, an equal partner that refused to be anything less. The galaxy had adapted to accommodate humanity's unique character, fierce when threatened, innovative when challenged, and stubbornly committed to proving that strength and partnership weren't mutually exclusive. As Michael powered down the exhibit, for the night, he reflected that Admiral Chen would be pleased. Humanity hadn't just earned a place among the stars. They had helped reshape what that place could mean, for themselves and for every species that called the galaxy home. The Supercarrier had long since been decommissioned, replaced by newer designs that incorporated both human and Council innovations. But its arrival remained the defining moment of galactic history, the day when the forgotten species returned, not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as equals demanding recognition. And the galaxy, after its initial shock, had ultimately been grateful for the shakeup. The stars belonged to everyone now, but humanity had certainly made them more interesting.